Hello friends, today we'll be talking about the poetry Money Madness. This poetry is written by a famous poet D.H. Lawrence. He is also known as David Herbert Lawrence. D.H. Lawrence was born on September 11, 1885 in England and he died in France. He is a popularly known as English author who has written many novels, short stories, poems, plays, travel books, essays and even letters. His very famous and popular writing has emerged out with Sons and Lovers, The Rainbow, and The Women in Love, representing something about the 20th century. He became later on a pupil teacher in the Eastwood in 1902, where he was encouraged to write his books. His very first book was published in 1905 in the newspaper article, and later on it kept on to be in succeeding process. He further studied in the university colleges in 1906 to 1908, earning his teacher's certificate, and he continued his writing of poetries and stories and drafting many novels, out of which White Peacock is the one. The poem Money Madness was first published by D.H. Lawrence in the year 1932, that is posthumously. We find through this poetry the collection of Ship of Death and other poems. The title of the poem, that is Money Madness, gives the reader something about a hint about and central idea of human idea and his need for the madness of money. The Money Madness poem is about the insanity over the money and its materialistic world, how human behave when the money is around in this materialistic world. It also is telling something about that it is the crisp note and the jingles of the coins which help the person, that is the human beings, to become a mad idea. According to the poet, the multitude of madness and the individual has its fair share of insanity. The poet further describes that money makes the man a slave, afraid of losing the money, and its position completely is a madness. He also views that money madness is more frightening than any other cause. Becoming penniless creates a person an enslaved for the money. The poor ones are even more poor and they are forced to eat the dirt, as well as they are not considered human for the survival purpose also. Otherwise, the madness might have linked to the humankind and ruthless killing can take place. The structure and the idea of the money madness is being represented in 30 lines with a separated stanza, number of stanzas. Some stanza in this particular poetry you can find is one line, while others may be of two to five lines. This is a very specific and typical kind of idea which is represented by the writer. We can call this as a free verse of writing. The complete poetry is written in the first person pattern and is lyrical in nature. The lines have a prosic structure and you can find a use of repetitions being there in the poem. The poetry is completely structured in such a manner that you can find each section using an end-stopped lines. Let's understand the poetry in the form of line patterns. Let's understand the poetry with the very first 1 to 5 lines. The poem Money Madness begins here with the very ironic statement. Here, Lawrence describes money as a vast and collective alignment of mankind. This alignment is not limited to the individual. Rather, it becomes more and more as humanity grows. The speaker further says that madness differs from person to person. Each person has its own unique madness, and this is the root cause of creating the problem, manifesting the problem. The speaker further in these lines you can find giving the idea how the man is living a materialistic life. It holds its pound and pangs its heart. He expresses these with a few lines like pound note without a pang. The poet invests these lines in a form of sarcasm. The use of sarcasm over here with the internal rhyming scheme of P sound is completely creating a humorous kind of idea. Here, the poet wants to tell the people that if a person holds a 10-pound note in a moment of real tremor when you ask for the same, but it actually fades away in the selfishness of humankind. The further lines from 6 to 12 explains the more extent madness of human being towards the money. Here Lawrence reveals another very symptoms of insanity among the people when they are dealing with the idea of money. This idea of money is none other than creating an enslavement. They become a slave under the money. According to poet, here money makes one a fearful person, a slave in the mind which is filled completely with the greed. These slaves are furtherly grounded to even torture the other people, that is, the rich people torture the poor people. The poet personalizes over here the money as a slaver or the master, that is, money is the master and poor people are the slaves over here. This enslavement of the people gets down on the knees, and even the strange tremors are being felt with the help of money madness. The images which the poet conveys is completely submission of a man or a humankind towards the money. With the fear that you will lose the money, this cruel power is completely dominant over the human mind, and finally you are none other than a slave of money. The poet further says that money itself is worthless. It is the people perception that some notes look precious, while he further also says that it is a natural fear of losing something. Lawrence refer over here in a form of apprehension pattern. D.H. Lawrence further says that money is not the cause of actually problem. Rather, the madness is created with the fear which the people have within them. This is nothing else but the insanity. It is because of the human behavior as they get and be with the money. They judge people on one category of money and the other on the other category. The cruel treatment of these people with the help of the money is none other than as compared to eating dirt and living a life in a cold winter season. The further lines of 13 to 20, you can find that the poet further explains something about differences of the speakers and its cases. He says that he is penniless and people won't think about him twice before they try to confront them. He thinks that he is a person with a little bread and he is not allowed to die because they feed him with little bread. But this little bread is actually a suffering from him because it is of eating dirt only. The further poet says that he purchases something that is with the help of money, and that purchase is nothing else but the pleasure and of course the sufferings. This is the power of the money. He then says that instead of him eating a dirt, will provide the speaker with a kind of a business. This business is try to purchase one's self-worth with the money only. However, the poet's tone over here is completely clear and he is afraid of the senseless behavior of people with each other because of money. He says that he does not want to sell himself for anyone if he has no money. That is, he cannot be justified as a human being to survive in this society if does not have a money. This complete idea is being presented in a form of repetition of the sentences, which is, I quote, I shall have to eat dirt, I unquote. This is a tensed state of mental idea. This mental state of idea represented by Lawrence says that he is living in a fearful life with a fearful people. Line 21 to 30 explains in depth more something about the madness in a form of ironical patterns. The very first patterns which we find in this ironical is the role of the money. He says nothing is being protected and nothing is being redeemed. He is against these condemnation. In a long run, he would like to save people from eating this dirt. What human beings are up to the wrong. The poet does not expect this. He is of the view that all the basis need of the survival should be free for everyone. He further includes that the basic necessities like food, shelter, fire are the phrases which are free for the human provided by the nature to him. But later on in the further lines he continues the importance of the idea. Here the poet speaks about the ruthlessness of the humankind to emphasize how more people in today's generation with developing technology are becoming more ruthless towards the mankind. According to him, the people must regain their senses before they start killing each other for the cause of the money. It is not limited to this only. He further says that there might be several tragic consequences if this money madness continues. The poet over here in this poetry uses various kinds of devices. The devices which are used by the poet are much specific and much interesting to be studied. The idea of poetic explanation is being given with the help of the few poetic devices like enjambment. You can find that enjambment is nothing else but it is a form of a term of continuous form of sentences where one line then continues with a very new other kind of line. It is a very typical lack of punctuation where readers can be used to follow the lines by connecting itself. Of course, these are the lines which are not punctuated and henceforth there is a smoothness in the lines. The second poetic device used is repetition. We all know the word that is money and madness in the whole poetry is used for the number of times. This poetic device that is repetition is created for the artistic effect. Also, you can find the word that is used to create again and again a kind of frightness and fearfulness in the speaker's mind and the reader's mind. The third device used is an irony. The poet here uses the irony with the word or the phrase, money is our madness, our vast collective madness. This expression shows the significance which is completely opposite. That is, money is required, but it is a madness, and this is not a single madness, it is a collective madness of the human category. The next device used is sarcasm. It occurs in a second and the third line where you can find that a ridicule is being used with the help of the word to represent the attachment of the people towards the money. This, in short, creates a humorous idea. The next very popular term used is personification. With the help of the lines, for example, for money has a fearful, cruel power among the men. This personification is none other than the idea of how the humans are being treating each other. They are completely represented with the idea of money being cruel to that of the human being, similar to that of the human being. The next idea, that is alliteration, is an multitude of matter, money madness, my money mad. That means you can find M is being continuously repeated, which is a typical idea. Metaphor, the next idea, you can find this idea uses the word which are not actually applicable. For example, then let him eat dirt and go cold. Dirt is basically used over here as a metaphor for attacking on a reputation, and at the same time it is making you to show that the action is very unimportant. That means the person is very unimportant. This is something related to the poem Money Madness.